I'm Brian Maguire. I went up to Blair's in 1958 from St Stephen's Primary School in Clydebank, one of many bankies that ended up in Blair's round about that time. There were another two guys went up with me. We had been friends at primary school. And the reason we went, to be honest with you, it wasn't so much to do with a vocation or feeling a vocation, more to do with a bit of an adventure, to be perfectly honest. There was a lad in the year above me at primary school, James McKierney, and he had gone to Blair's the year before, and we all thought that sounds like a good adventure, so let's apply. So that's how I ended up at Blair's.
So there was no Damascus moment?
No, I'm afraid not. No, there wasn't anything like that. That's the way I remember it now, but that was a long time ago. Maybe there were other motivations that I've forgotten about.
Do you remember your arrival? Blair's Kenna, I suppose we're talking about.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't. My memory for details not great, but I don't actually remember my day of arrival. I do remember going to the station in those days to go up to Blair's. In those days, it was from Buchanan Street, which has been closed for many years. We travelled up, and I do have some recollection there, and just the numbers of people in that station platform, and a kind of sense of excitement that it was actually happening. Yeah.
Any recollections of, maybe not day one, but your initial impressions of the place?
Well, just awe of the place, I think, would be the word. As you come up the main driveway around the heart, I mean the building was awe-inspiring. It was absolutely vast. I can understand for people who were maybe going up by themselves and didn't know anybody, it could have been quite intimidating in many ways. It was so grand. But I do remember that, thinking, this is some place, you know. But we had talked about, things like having picnics in the dormitory in the middle of the night and things like this. You know, we imagined, I suppose these were from daft school books, you know, about guys that had gone to public schools and get up to all sorts of pranks. But the pranks didn't really start for me till about third year. I was quite a good boy in first and second year.
Who was rector when you first went?
It was Stephen McGill, later Bishop McGill. I think it was 1960 that he was made a bishop, and I do have a vivid memory, and I do have photographs of it as well, of us gathered round at the front of the college as he was making his formal departure. It was either a Morris Oxford or an Austin Cambridge. I can't rightly remember now, but that was a car he drove away, and we were all round there to see him leaving. I mean, the experience I had of Bishop McGill during my first couple of years at Blair's was a good one. I mean, I felt he was a good rector. He was a fair rector. Yeah, I liked him.
Were there any other key principal characters of the place that you've recollections of?
Oh, absolutely. After Stephen McGill, it was later Bishop Thompson, who was there. My recollection is he'd been at Drygrange and come up to Blair's as rector. I'll not say this on camera, what he was known as, but anyway, everybody's got a nickname, and that was no exception. That's okay. He was known as Pregnant Pete. Because he was very tall and slim, but he had this protruding belly. So that's what he was known as. Presumably that nickname came from Drygrange, but anyway. Our form master was Father John Kane, and our forum was St Ninian's Forum. And he was a character, Father Kane. You didn't cross him lightly. He would come down on you like a ton of bricks if you did. But at the same time, he was seen by the other profs there and the other boys, other years, as being very progressive, shall we say. He would have some of us up to his room to watch television, which in those days was totally unheard of. I know things changed a lot radically later, but in those days, you never saw television in Blair's, but he would have some of us up to his room maybe to, okay, it was to watch something like Panorama or something, you know, but still, that was considered a huge privilege in those days. And when the forum rooms opened in the beginning of my third year, he used to record the top 20 in his reel-to-reel recorder from Radio Luxembourg on a Sunday night. And we got the freedom to play that every night we were up in the forum room. And we did. And he used to get a lot of the pop records from jukeboxes. I don't know how old they would be by that time, but probably only a few months old, you know. They weren't being played regularly as the charts changed. So he got hold of a lot of them. He would put the wee centres back in that you could get. And we would play them. He would get his LPs of Elvis, and I mean, the rest of Blair's was very, very jealous. The older guys as well, older years didn't get anything like that. So John Kane made an impression, I think, in all of us. I know that after I left near the end of fourth year, they started a kind of woodwork section in the forum room, and they used to make electric guitars. The guys would make electric guitars, so they had their own kind of group latterly, I think, by the time that my year got to 6th year. So it was seen by some as progressive. Others, of course, didn't approve. I'm sure a lot of the other profs didn't approve of things that he was doing, but he had a mind of his own, Father Kane. If he wanted to do it, he would do it. But equally, as I said earlier, it came down like a ton of bricks on you if you stepped out of line. I remember one time our class was totally out of control in a class by another prof. And obviously John Kane's class that he was taking was next door, and he came in and he went through us like a dose of salts. We knew that was the last time we'd be behaving like that. So, yeah, he was a character. I did visit him when he was down in Dalry after he left Blair's. Peter Curran and I visited him and saw him, that was the last time I met with him.
You mentioned the forum. Did that change or become new? Just when you said it sounded as if that changed from first year onwards. Did they change in your first few years, the forum rooms?
The forum rooms were only started in our third year. We didn't have a forum room first and second year, so every evening we'd be in the play hall, table tennis or whatever. Skating, for example, in the skating corridor. I don't know if that was a thing later. But up by the washrooms, you would go up the stairs to the washrooms just after you'd passed the play hall, up the stairs there. And if you turned right, the corridor where all the baths were, we didn't have showers. It was only baths in our day. And we used to skate from the boot room right along that corridor, jump off the steps at the end. You weren't allowed down into the main corridor, but didn't stop some of us. But yeah. But third year we had the forum rooms, and that made a big difference.
Was that like it was for someone else in the garages? Was that old building?
It was the original part of the college, the old college building, where the theatre was. They used that for the theatre, but they didn't use any of the other rooms, to my recollection, until they opened the forum rooms in our third year. So that 59, so that would have been 1960. I think it must have been opened. Yeah.
Any other parts of the building or grounds evoke particular
Yeah, I mean, I remember I remember the boot room very well. You know, coming in from football and cleaning your cleaning your boots and all the rest of it. And, you know, the distinct odour of a lot of guys having sweated and covered in mud, as we regularly were coming into the boot room. And I'm trying to think of any other parts that really stood out. Study hall, I remember the first time seeing the study hall, all these rows of desks. Again, very intimidating. I mean, they were such, even in 1958, they were pretty old fashioned looking. You know, all these ranks of desks going down. And I remember that place well. Other areas, the chapel, I mean, definitely the chapel was stunning. I mean, it still is to a certain extent, although it's deteriorated a bit over the years, but it was absolutely stunning. Never seen anything like it. So, I suppose the cubicles, I mean, we didn't know, well, I didn't know what to expect when up to the dormitory, and to see all these cubicles with just a curtain, and as you went up through the years, you get a wee bit more of a window in your cubicle each year. So at first year, no window, and then gradually you get a wee bit more window. So I remember the progression. I was in several of the dormitories. Started off in St John's, and I was in St Luke's, St Matthew's. I think I was in most of the dormitories at one stage or other. Yeah. So there were some of the places, the refectory. I mean, I remember all these places. I know I've been up many times since then, but I would have remembered those places anyway, even if I'd never seen them again, because they really do stick in your memory, I think.
Did you have any roles, responsibilities, jobs during your time?
Absolutely none. I think the only time, I think you're eligible from about fourth year onwards, but I had a third year, I went off the rails just a wee bit. And I didn't really expect to get made a junior censor or anything in fourth year, and sure enough, I wasn't. But no, I didn't. I left near the end of fourth year. But other areas I remember that, you know, obviously the football pitches, and you remember scoring your odd goal. I remember in one game I actually managed to score 2 goals, and I was absolutely thrilled with myself, because I never played up front. I always played right half. So, or fullback. I don't know why I was a fullback, my size, because I was quite small when I was up there. But anyway, maybe put me there because I was useless everywhere else. But anyway, I remember scoring 2 goals, and just after I scored the second goal from a volley from a corner, which I was very proud of, and then the game was snowed off, so the result didn't count. I enjoyed tennis, and I was even in the cricket team and things like that. So I enjoyed all that table tennis. Really liked table tennis as well.
What form were you in? Any thoughts of the rest of your form recollections?
Yeah.
Did you hunt as a pack or do things as a gang?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like most of the forums at Blair's, you had a group of, you know, closer friends maybe. Well, usually had that. But, I mean, it was nobody, I don't remember anybody in our year that, particularly in the first year, I think everybody was pretty friendly. You know, if you were out and you could be with one crowd one day, another crowd another day. It didn't really matter much. But I suppose the ones I remember are, I remember Pat McMahon. Well, he was from Croy, of course, in our year, and Pat stood out as a brilliant footballer. There was one video, it was probably taken by John Kane. Tommy knows the story and probably seen the video. We're playing football in first year, and I'm running down the left wing on this occasion for some obscure reason. And at the pitch, the lower pitch was just next to the Philosophers where the first year played. There was quite long grass just at the edge of the pitch. So I'm tearing after this ball, ran into the grass and fell flat on my face. And in the video, switches are presumably edited, especially for that reason. Switches to Pat McMahon running rings around everybody in the middle of the pitch, just after that. So the contrast was quite marked. But anyway, I persevered. I always enjoyed football, but I can't claim to have been a brilliant footballer. But you always think when you get it, I'm really going to do well today, and I look forward to the game. And it was that feeling before every game, but I was always mediocre rather than wonderful.
What were your daily or weekly routine?
Yeah, I mean, what was it in the morning? You answered Deo Gratias, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. I remember the horrible pain of getting up in the morning at that ridiculous hour, whatever it was. Was it 6:30 or something? I got up. Yeah, and coming downstairs, things like dropping your socks from a great height into the basket, and the aroma rising up as you come down the stairs from the basket at the bottom, and then get into a freezing cold washroom and getting washed. I don't know if that was a tradition that lasted, but certainly that's what happened. We were there.
The one in the well. The one in the well. Couldn't you do that?
Right. The routine was, as I recall it anyway, we went there, we got a quick wash in the morning. You used to tuck your shirt collar in, didn't take your shirt off. You were dressed, obviously, coming down from your cubicle from the dorm, and you tucked your collar in, give yourself a quick wash. And first year you shared a sink with somebody else. And then it was off to Mass and then breakfast after Mass. But this was during the Grand Silence, so, nobody was allowed to talk from the night before right through the night. I remember that, certainly. Other routines, very foggy, I must say, but I remember we had sports on a Tuesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, a Saturday. Remember things like waiting bated breath to see if we were going to have a play day, as the decano used to go up to the rector to seek a play day if there was any kind of special occasion we could think of that might qualify as a play day. So, that was always a big event if you come back down and a play day was announced. Wow, that was wonderful. I remember crop walks distinctly. If you weren't playing a sport, there sometimes you ended up in a crop walk, and of course the more senior pupils would bully the younger ones to walk as fast as possible and try and break the record of how far they could walk. We got to Cove Bay, I remember it, at least on one occasion. That was quite a long walk.
For non-Laurentians who might ever watch it, could you describe the crop walk? What was the crop walk?
It was just a very long walk that was supervised by older pupils, and you had to go at one heck of a pace because everybody wanted to come back with either the record or to make some claim about what distance they had managed to do in their crop walk. So we had to pay the penalty for other people's glory. But, yeah. Other parts of the routine, I have to be honest, I'm pretty foggy on, but I remember the readings at, the dinner. Somebody would stand up on a bench and do a reading of a book. I remember things like before the run up to going home for a holiday period, we would sing all these daft songs in the refectory, the bog, the Ranton Bog, that was one of them. And remember any of the other ones? Daisy, for some reason, an hour you give me your answer, do, and all that. We used to sing all these crazy songs in the run up to going home for the holidays. One time I do remember I didn't get home at Christmas. Well, I was delayed in getting home because I wasn't well. It turns out, I didn't realise at the time, it turns out I had pneumonia. I was kept back for a day or two, you know, just to recover. But, routine, yeah.
What about the big days, the special days, the holidays, any of them stick in mind?
Any of the holidays,
Feast days,
feast days, that kind of thing, yeah.
Big days.
Well, I remember retreats, you know. We used to have, I think we'd once a year, a 3-day retreat, I think I seem to remember. Of course, what used to happen was the boys used to learn sign language. And we didn't talk, but we would sign each other, you know, as a way of getting round the... I think that happened in the Grand Silence on occasions as well, you know.
I think as well, during that feast day, we got a bottle of scotch.
Oh yes, that's right. Aye, we did. Yeah. I remember at the table, you know, that certainly at dinner time, a lot depended on who your divider was, as to whether you were allowed to dump food if you didn't like it, or whether you were forced to eat it. And I remember the thing that I disliked most was spinach. And I just could not chew and swallow spinach properly. But when you were forced to eat it, I used to put it in my mouth, and then I would take a gulp of milk and just swallow it over whole. And I'd usually end up with a gut ache because I hadn't digested it properly. But
Sadly, I know exactly what you mean about who your divider was. But
yeah.
Tell us what that role was, what that meant.
Yeah. Well, the table, each table at the refectory, although the actual layout was big long lines of tables all together, but each that was broken down to individual tables, which comprised a divider, who would normally be from 6th year, and he was the head of the table. You had a subdivider, who was obviously next in rank. Somebody next to was called a sub-scrub. Now, I've never found out where that name came from, but that was on one side of the table. Opposite them on the other side was a tea man. Name is self-explanatory, I suppose, because we get tea in a huge big teapot already made up with milk and sugar. It was known as booze, and it was a tea man's job to pour that. And he would sometimes pour high tea. That was a common thing, high tea. We get high tea, so he would lift the pot way up high and try and see if you could get it into the cup. So you very often got a cup of tea that your saucer was swimming in it, and there was hardly any tea in the cup. And then there was the second lowest and the lowest. At a conventional table, that would be from 6th year, 5th year, 4th year, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, going down like that. But sometimes, depending on numbers, you might have a divider from 5th year. But so the divider was all powerful, and he could decide if you were going to eat what was in front of you, or whether you were allowed to what was called dump it. So it was a big tureen in the table that, say it was Irish stew, would come in, and once that was all doled out, that could be used to dump food if the divider was sympathetic to your cause. If not, you were forced to eat it. Most of the meals I enjoyed, I have to say. Rat pie was my favourite. Irish stew, I loved those two. Now the bread and butter pudding, which was a very common one that we got. Bread and butter pudding was constantly variable. Some days it was quite dry and thick, and other days it would run off your plate. But I enjoyed it no matter how it came. I thoroughly enjoyed the bread and butter pudding. So I was all right with most of the food. Spinach, I just couldn't stomach. I'm sure there are other things as well I wasn't too keen on, but on the whole, I do remember vividly the cornflake sandwiches. And I absolutely adored cornflake sandwiches, to the point that after I left Blair's, if I was working really late and didn't have time for a dinner, and I would go home at 10 o'clock at night, I would like nothing better at that time than a cornflake sandwich. And the bread at Blair's, I mean, it was so thick. So you had this big sandwich about this thick that you tucked into. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Lots of butter on it. So that's a distinct memory.
Is that your take home for culinary habits from Blair's?
It was one of them. Main one, I think, yeah.
What would you say, if you enjoyed anything, what did you enjoy most of it?
But Blair's, I think I enjoyed, to be honest, the camaraderie, really. I really liked Blair's. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I mean, I enjoyed the sports, and but I think that would be the main thing. I really enjoyed just being with the other guys and making really close friendships. Because when I left, I really missed Blair's. I really missed it a lot. I would constantly dream about being back there, you know. Crazy, but I must say, I never really had any bad experiences at Blair's. Not saying it was all, you know, smiley, happy times constantly, but okay, you had your ups and downs, and you had your disagreements with other people and so on. That's life. But no, I thought it was I enjoyed it.
Like school, I like, you know, the subjects. Did that change or shape anything that became the future? Any favourite subjects?
Yeah, well, not so much favourite subjects, but when I left in fourth year, we had done Latin and Greek, of course, at Blair's. Done virtually no science, you know, worth talking about. And so when I left Blair's and went to an outside secondary school, that was St. Pat's in Dumbarton, I ended up taking higher Greek and Latin, did French and history and things like that, and arithmetic, maths and English, but I kind of focused in the classics. So it constrained what I did to some extent when I left Blair's. I mean, my favourite subjects would have been probably English and maths. Obviously, I was still doing them, but they would probably have been my favourites at Blair's. I enjoyed English and maths. Yeah.
What would be the things you liked least?
Sorry?
What would be the things you liked least?
Just things general that I liked least about Blair's. Croc walks.
6 in the morning.
What's that?
6:30 in the
Well,
morning.
yes, 6:30 in the morning. But 6:30 in the morning on certain occasions was actually wonderful. And that was when I was in one of the cubicles on the overspill from the infirmary if you weren't well. And as you were convalescing, you get put in St. John's dormitory, you get put in one of the cubicles right close to the infirmary. And when bell went in the morning and everybody was having to get up, it was a wonderful feeling just to turn over and go back to sleep. So I did enjoy 6:30, only on those occasions.
It's not in the script. Who ran the infirmary? Does that have vivid memories of that place and all?
I just remember Sister Infirmarian, but I can't remember her name, you know, who it was when I was there. Yeah. No, I can't remember at all. I can't remember the name of the Sister Infirmarian when I was there. Could have changed while I was there as well. I honestly can't remember. Yeah.
Any single standout memories, episodes, occasions?
Yeah. There was one time, this wasn't a pleasant one, but there was a group of us playing keepy uppy in the Pale Court. So we were in a circle, not with a tennis ball, which is what you normally played Pale with. I love Pale. I mean, I was on the Pale Courts whenever I could. And we were just in a circle playing keepy uppy. I think Pat was there, Colin McInnes, who went on to the priesthood and I've kept in touch with over the years, and a few other guys. So I went down to head the ball, probably foolishly because it was quite low, and I went down to head it. And Colin McInnes kicked it I had to kick it. Well, I didn't kick the ball, but he did kick me right there in the face, just at the top of the eye. Still got swelling in the bone there from that. And they knocked me out cold. And the next thing I can remember is being lifted up, carried by the guys back into the college. I was in bed for the rest of the day, and I was really very sick and so on. And then I was taken to Aberdeen Hospital, and it was just for observation. I was there overnight. There was another guy there actually in the ward who'd been playing football, not from Blair's, and he'd had a kick in the head at football, and he was in the same ward as me, so we exchanged experiences. But that's a standout memory, certainly. I'm sure there are others. I should have thought more about this beforehand, but I do remember Pentecost. Well, I enjoyed Pentecost parents coming up, and that was always a big occasion. And you got some privileges at that time. I think you were able to go to places that you weren't normally able to go to. But I have to say, during third year, we did go to a few places we weren't supposed to go to, but just try to make sure nobody knew. But
at that time was the end of year at Gallowgate Selwyn. Was there any end of year stuff, plays, performances?
Yeah, well, we didn't. It was always good. I must say the 6th year and 5th year, I think, as well. Always put on really good performances. I enjoyed that. Enjoyed going to the cinemas. We used to get the films on occasions. I can't remember how often we got that, but I remember seeing a few films. I don't remember anybody in our year doing any performances. What I do remember is the Pups concert in first year. So the first year students were known as Pups. And there was always first year concert. Now, in my time, it was in the Play Hall. And I remember a guy, Dennis Kincaid, really nice guy. And it was ridiculous. I know I'm getting off at a tangent here a wee bit, but first and second year, we were forced to wear short trousers. You weren't allowed to wear long trousers until third year. But because I had very dark hair, I had black hair, and by the time I'd got to second year, I had very hairy legs, and there was a few of us like that. And we had to wear these short trousers with hairy legs. That must have looked ridiculous. But Dennis Kincaid, Dennis was a good bit taller than me. I wasn't tall. Dennis was a good bit taller. And here was this guy, he was really quite tall with short trousers on and so on. But anyway, that's an aside. But I do remember the Pups concert, and he sang, I think it was All Shook Up he sang, Elvis, right? So he was known as Elvis ever after that. But that was a scary time, the Pups concert, because you had to come up with something. I was so terrified, I can't even remember what I did, but we all had to do something, Yeah.
What did your time at Blair's give you? What did you take away with you that learned that was valuable or shaped your life, positively or otherwise?
Well, I think, as I said before, I really enjoyed my experience at Blair's. It did mean a lot to me, and I missed it when I left. And I think one thing it did do, I think it deepened my religious faith. And since then, I've always been involved in the church, really, in one way or another. When I was I was only 15 when I left Blair's, and got involved in our church, as I had been an altar boy there before, before I left for Blair's. I think my motivation was we had an altar boys football team, so that's probably why I always get playing football after the practice on a Saturday morning. I'd been an altar boy before. I wasn't an altar boy after I left, but we got involved in youth activities, and building up kind of youth facilities in the church. A few of us And then since then, I've always been involved in one way or another in the church, either reading or RCIA or a music side of things, you know. So it gave me. I think I would put that down to my experience at Blair's, really deepening my commitment to the church and involvement in it.
Anything stuck with you from your days at Blair's? Less positive. You mentioned the lack of science or something like that. Anything
Yeah.
that you would say is less positive.
I mean, I would question now very much the sense, I suppose, of boys as young as 11 or 12, you know, kind of leaving home at that stage to go to a seminary. I'm not sure in retrospect, although I enjoyed it, but I would question whether that was maybe the right way to go about it. But and I suppose in some ways, yes, the education was a wee bit narrow in some way because the range of subject was a bit narrower in my day, but it's hard to tell really how much that kind of limited. I don't think it really had any long-term effect on my future, apart from the fact, as I say, well, I didn't say, but I'll say now, I ended up going to university and doing a year of law. And I did that because, A, we didn't get wonderful career advice in those days, but also because the hires that I did have were Latin and Greek, didn't seem to qualify me to do very much else. But that was because I didn't get very good career advice. So I suppose it limited in a way that part. But I did then eventually, after a while, go back to university after I had done a year of law and did a different degree entirely. But I suppose it had a minor effect on, you know, when I left school at first.
I'm going to read this one straight for the sheep rankings. I don't think that one is instinctive. How would you speak of Blair's and your time there to others? What do you think Blair stands for?
Yeah. Well, I've always spoken of Blair's very positively, and I've, you know, a crowd of us have, since about 2000, I think we first did it, going up to Blair's more or less every first weekend in June since then. And as I say, I love my time there, so it meant a lot to me in that sense. So a very positive experience. As I said a moment ago, I'm not sure it's something I would say would be appropriate today, that we have that kind of junior seminary. But yeah, hard to think of
I mean, I think
anything
you're
else.
actually almost answering the next question, which is,
Right.
are there questions you now ask yourself in the Blair's when you look back? Was it fulfilling its purpose while you were there? Was its closure inevitable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know the closure, there was a lot of controversy around it and the way it was done very, very quickly latterly. And at that time, I mean, I was sad to see it close, but I suppose it's after a few years on reflection, thinking, well, it probably had served its purpose and maybe it was appropriate that it closed at that time, but not because I thought it wasn't a good place to be or it wasn't enjoyable. I did enjoy it, but I'm not sure that it's the right way to do things. But that's with hindsight, I suppose.
So, no, this is number 17.
I feel I've been mumbling, but
Not at all. Is there anything that we've not touched on or you think we've missed and that you would add to your time or thoughts and reflections on Blair?
no, I think probably covered most of the things that I can recall, Paul. I can't really think of anything else. I'm sure there's other things, but I can't off the top of my head think of anything that we've not covered. Having said that, I'll probably think back and think, God, why didn't I mention that? Why didn't I mention, you know? But I jotted some things down on my phone. Would it be possible to have a wee look just now? I know you'll edit this bit out, but
Precisely so.
yeah. just very, very quickly, just to see what. No, I've actually mentioned everything I've jotted down there. So.
In which case, that's brilliant.
Right. Okay, is that me?
That is you.
Right.